Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Friday night. That's right, this is Friday night. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? I don't know where my kids are because I don't have any. So, welcome to the Fantasy Football Champs After Dark. And we got a great show planned for you. I am your host, Jim Day. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyTaz. And we are a proud member of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. I knew I was going to screw that up on the first night. Podcast Network. And we're growing all over the place. We are like the Borg. You will be assimilated. So let me bring on my two co-hosts. We can get into this show. First, I'm going to bring on Mr. Andy Singleton. How you doing, Andy?
Jimmy, what's going on? I have no idea where my kids are because as young as people say I look, my kids are adults. So they're out on a Friday night thinking, what the hell are you doing talking football at 10 o'clock live, no less. But we're here for the people that aren't out. So hopefully you're tuning in with us.
Which is probably a lot of them. So we're good with that. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
I am exhausted right now. I work as a firefighter in my main career, so I just came off a 24-hour shift. But I knew we had this debut tonight. I was pleased, honored, humbled to be tapped by Mr. Day, the Fantasy Taz himself, to join him in this venture. And I got to give you props. I put it in the Slack the other day. I am blown away by how quickly you have made this whole network a thing. I mean, I don't even think it was 10 days ago we just had this show, and now we're up to over a dozen, and not just like any dozen. Like there are a lot of mutual friends that have their podcasts in this network now. I look up and I see, big names to up and comers to, like I said, well-established shows already. So this has been fantastic, and I'm excited to see how things get going because it's only June 7th. We have, at least a good full 2 to 3 months before we're in the real heart of this thing. So I'm ready to get going.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to it. And we're now up to 16 podcasts and over 27 hours of podcast programming each and every week. So we are definitely growing. And then, of course, our second co-host, Mr. Frank Scandurro. Frank, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and say hi to the lovely folks.
Hey, everybody. How y'all doing? Jim, thanks as always for bringing me on. I appreciate you. I don't know why you picked me out of the bunch to be the third co-host, but I do appreciate you giving me the chance.
Well, you kept asking me like 10 times a day.
Oh, yeah. Well, persistent. Glad to be here with you and Andy. Glad to start this off. Like Andy said, we got a bunch of hosts that are on their way coming after this week. We got a bunch of hosts lined up to lighten up your Friday evenings. I'm looking forward to it. Glad to be here.
Cool. Well, let's jump right in. One of the big pieces of news that came out was, Tyreek Hill, and now they're saying that at least the police are saying that they're not going to advance a case. So then, Tom Pelissero of NFL Network came out and said it looked like Tyreek Hill would be at training camp next month, and all of a sudden, fantasy world was going on fire. Twitter was a flutter with all the news that maybe Tyreek Hill would be there and playing this year. And, all of a sudden people were trying to back off McCall Hardman and trying to figure out what was going on there. So I'll start with you, Frank. What's your thoughts here about Tyreek Hill? Are you buying it? You think he's going to get a full season in? Or is Mr. Goodell just going to step in and do what he always does and screw us all over at the last freaking second?
Well, honestly, I don't think he plays this season. At least the beginning of the season. I think Goodell's going to suspend him somewhat just because of if he doesn't, I think there's going to be too many people calling for his head. Because even though there's no evidence that he broke his son's arm, I mean, it's the fact of the matter is that his son's arm still got broken by somebody. Somebody did something. You know what I mean? And there's nobody to prove it.
There's still rumors out there that say that he wasn't even in town when it happened. So it'll be hard to really, say. And that's why the cops really let it go, is because they have no proof of who actually hurt the son. None at all. And, this is one of the things that bothers me the most about it is that, Tyreek Hill hasn't been proven guilty of anything yet. Everybody is already have him guilty, have him, he should be out of the league, all of this stuff. And, it's just crazy. I mean, whatever happened to, innocent until proven guilty, it seems like that's just gone right out the window. Andy, I'll turn to you. What's your thoughts here? What do you think happens with Tyreek Hill? Is he somebody you buy into this year or not?
Yeah, so this is torn, and obviously, this news is just kind of coming out. But I saw in one of my leagues, guys were chatting, and somebody was bringing up Ezekiel Elliott didn't get charges or arrested or anything like that, but still faced the suspension and whatnot. So just because that news is coming out doesn't necessarily mean Tyreek Hill is going to be a fantasy asset or isn't going to miss time, or it just looks like he's not going to get cut by the Chiefs. But this is still a pending and fluid situation. I hate using that expression fluid because it's so overdone now, but it is a fluid situation.
You can always use dynamic instead of fluid if you don't like fluid.
Dynamic. The liquidity of this situation is very moist. But I'm curious to see what happens because I mean there's so many targets that I want because of some of these are players I like. I love James Williams from Washington State, and he was like an afterthought. I liked Darwin Thompson a lot. I loved Byron Pringle last year, who was coming back, from a lost rookie season. You look at, just all the who could be next man up to fill that void. Like there's a lot of guys. I mean, Damien Williams was going for a first-round pick a few short months ago, and that obviously has changed a little, but he's still pretty high draft pick, in redraft especially. So it's everybody's clamoring for that spot. And it might still be Hills in the first place. I personally think he's facing probably at least 6 games before it's all said and done. But, do I want him? Are we playing the moral game where I have to say, no, I don't want him because of what he did. But meanwhile, he's going to be beating me because somebody else rushes him.
Again, we just don't know what he did yet. So, look, I'll tell you how I break it down. First of all, Goodell, it almost seems to me like getting a suspension is almost a foregone conclusion from Goodell, because it seemed to me when he got drafted and they weren't able to do anything about the previous history he had of where he tried to choke his girlfriend, then I think Goodell wants to get that in now, so he has something in. So that's going to happen. But my problem with that is that they've already, they've come out and said today that they're not even going to start their investigation until Child Protection Services finishes theirs. Well, I don't know about you guys, but in my state, Child Protection Services doesn't do anything fast. So if their investigation continues for a long time, there's a good chance that they just put Hill on the commissioner's exempt list so he can't play until that's all ironed out, in which case we have no idea how long that could take. That scares the heck out of me.
Let me ask you both this, though. Frank, I didn't mean to cut you off, but into what I was saying, let's say if the worst news comes out and he is suspended or whatever the case is, how do you guys feel about that? Are you with this, I can't roster him because of what he did and I'm against that, or somebody else is going to pick him up, so what are we playing for at the end of the day? How do you feel about players like that?
I have him in 2 leagues, and when all this happened, I didn't do anything. I didn't sell him. I didn't get rid of him. I did trade for him in another league, in the Trade Addicts 5 league, but that was before the audio came out. They came out with on a Wednesday that everything was fine, and then on Thursday the audio came out. Well, between those 2 times, I had traded for him. So obviously I'm not going to get rid of him, and I don't agree with what he did, but I'm also not going to sell him.
I don't know what he did.
Well, this is my only thing is they got him on audio saying
that his girlfriend was a bitch and she had to be afraid of him. Oh, you've never yelled at your wife or girlfriend and said something stupid like that? If somebody was recording it, you could be in trouble. I know, I have.
but not about the kid, the way he said. That's the only thing that worries me about it. And maybe it's just me having morals, and like I said, I have him. I'm not going to sell him.
Morals now.
hey, don't let facts get in the way of a good, of a good conversation.
I'm not going to sell him for cheap. Let's put it that way. Just so
I'm not. Again, we don't know what he did. if we knew what he did and it was real and he did break his son's arm, I'll be the first one to tell you the man should go to jail. I have no qualms about that. I'm not a guy who's into men beating up women or kids at all. You know, just doesn't really fly with me in any way, shape, or form. But in this instance, we just don't know if he's done anything, and that's the part that makes me crazy. We don't know if he's done a single thing, and we're still dealing with this because of the way the NFL deals with this kind of stuff. We don't have a clue if he's done a single thing yet, and that's what makes me crazy. Enough about Tyreek Hill, because it's going to be crazy, and I'm sure a little later we'll get into some more that will actually reflect on that. But let's talk about some of the other news. You know, one of the other things that's come out in the last couple of days is, you know, Sony Michel hasn't been practicing, and it seems to be very hush-hush about why. And it's just, man, I hate New England when it comes to running backs because they're just such a hard team to get any kind of feel on what, you know, who is going to be consistent, who's not going to be consistent. Is anybody ever going to be consistent as a New England running back? So I'll start with you this time, Andy. What are your thoughts, first of all, on Sony Michel going into 2019 and the fact that he hasn't been practicing and we haven't been able to get a reason why?
I'm not worried at all. We had issues last year, you know, coming into his rookie season. So they showed no ill effects down the stretch. He was the go-to guy. The only problem I had, and this was before even any of this news came out, is I really like Damien Harris. Damien Harris is really good, and he seems to be getting written off. I mean, when we did our profile series, our NFL draft coverage, I was saying he reminded me of Nick Chubb this year, where he kind of slipped a little, and at the end of the day, you look up a year from now, people would be going, how did he come the RB 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it was in your league this year? Because at the end of the year, we're going to be looking at him going, yeah, he's worth a first round pick in next year's draft or future drafts. I like Damien Harris a lot.
Yeah, I guess you do. First round pick. You're talking about a first round pick next year.
Well, I mean, that's his upside, right? If he comes in and I think he's built to share the load with Michel. I think New England wants to run the ball a lot more. So I personally am not worried about Michel. It's a little disconcerted to not know why he's missed practices, but I'm not worried. I mean, it's like I said, it's June 7th. So if it was August 7th, it'd be a whole different story.
That's all we got to talk about right now is June 7th and what's going on right now. I get what you're saying. There's plenty of time. But
we could talk more about Tyreek Hill, but I don't want to make it crazy.
Well, it'd be the whole hour we could talk about Tyreek Hill. Be honest with you. I mean, it's easy to talk about that, dude. You know, the players behind him, like you were mentioning. I mean, and you didn't even mention the one that I'm kind of interested in, but we'll get to him later. And now, Frank, I want your input here. What are you looking at from New England? Are you trusting Sony Michel, or are you ready to invest heavily in Sony Michel at this point?
No, not at all. I'm not investing in Sony or in Harris. The only one I'm touching is James White in a PPR league. That's it. Because we know he can be consistent. He'll get his 8 to 12 touches a game. And he can give you, especially in a PPR, if he can get 8 or 9 catches in a game, like he's known to do.
9, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, he's the most consistent running back on that team. Always has been and always will be. It's just a matter of how much they use him per week, But I'm not touching Sony because of the knee problems. He had knee problems coming out of Georgia with both knees, and they drafted Harris for a reason, kind of the same way the Rams drafted Henderson. They know something that they're not releasing yet.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, go back to James White, though. Do you really think he can replicate last year? I mean, last year it was basically a black hole of the offense. He became a big part of that offense. He was just short of 100 carries. You had Damien Harris. I don't think, if we get anything close to what we got from Michel last year, you're not getting those 94 carries from White again. 123 targets. I mean, they added N'Keal Harry to that offense as well. So you got to.
But they lost Gronk.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they're still going to use him out the backfield. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. We kind of feel comfortable knowing what this offense is. So, all right, fine. Maybe the targets stay in that 125 range, but the carries are going to be down. So, not that he was doing a ton of damage, but he had 5 rushing touchdowns. So, you take that away, and all of a sudden he's, a different fantasy player.
And not to pile on, Frank, but who am I kidding? Screw that. I'm going to pile on. Yeah, I mean, last year was the biggest year he's ever had. Granted, 12 total touchdowns, like Andy was saying, 123 targets, 94 rushing attempts. The rushing attempts alone were double what he'd ever had before. The 5 rushing touchdowns, the only 2 rushing touchdowns he ever had before was in 2015. So total aberration there. The 7 receiving touches. Look, the guy is a good young running back. Well, not even young anymore, relative. He's 27 now. But I'm just more worried about how often he does get used this year. Let's say Michelle stays healthy. Damien Harris in the mix. They still kept Rex Burkhead, and they still like to get him involved as well. It's just I don't think White has to be that big a piece for them. For them as an NFL team, for their NFL existence, they still have somebody that they can use as a good piece, but they won't need him to be as heavy a piece as he was last year. And I think this year, people are just going to overpay for James White.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I'm not buying him.
Harris.
I'm not buying him because currently his ADP is at 59, and I'm not paying that when I can. Like, the guys going around him right now are. You got just running backs. You got David Montgomery, Kenyon Drake. You got Geis. Lamar Miller's going 7 picks after him. Coleman's going 8 picks after him. But there's other guys there around him that I would rather have than James White. But if you're going to have one of the Patriots running backs, it's going to be the one that can consistently stay healthy because Burkhead hasn't been able to. Sony got hurt last year, and we don't know what Harris can do. So why not take the guy that if you have to take one? Is my point.
I can tell you what Harris can do. Harris can do work. Harris is a beast.
We'll see.
So how come Harris then lost his starting gig in college to Josh Jacobs, who had very little before that?
He didn't lose it. They had a committee going. They had like a revolving door going there. Yeah. That's all that was.
A timeshare that was heavily invested in one time over the other. But okay, if that's what you want to go with, that's what we'll go with.
I still think he was a starter. He was a starter to me. I've become a Bama fan because apparently Cover 2 Network has labeled me a Saban fanboy. But, yeah. But, yeah, my boy Eric up there in Buffalo. So I'll take it. I've become a Bama guy. What can I tell you? Miami sucked the last few years.
I hate Bama because I'm an LSU fan, but we can't beat them, so it doesn't really matter.
I like old school coaches, and Nick Saban reminds me of coaches I used to have. It inspires me. I watch the games on Saturdays, and I get amped up just watching the sidelines. So,
okay, so let's move on to the next piece of information. We don't want to talk about Andy getting amped up.
No, we're driving Jim crazy.
Nothing drives Jim crazy, except my wife, but that's a different story. Who's in the news and who's really going gung-ho at OTAs once again? Yes, that would be Miami wide receiver DeVante Parker, showing off his first-round draft pick style and, class and just getting out there and balling during OTAs. If only that was the real thing, DeVante. We want to believe in you. We do. We want to believe in you, DeVante, but we just can't. You tease us like this every year. You did the same thing last year. You had a brilliant offseason and looked great going into the season. And then you caught 24 passes for 309 yards and 1 touchdown. I don't know about you guys, but I can't buy into DeVante Parker. I never could, never will. Start with you this time, Andy. What's your thoughts on DeVante Parker? Are you buying or are you just staying away?
DeVante Parker was the 1A of his class for me at the receiver position. And, I'm buying. And it's not so much about Parker himself. I think it comes down to, are you buying into the quarterback changes? Are you buying into getting Adam Gase out of town? I mean, I'm going to give them a pass. Brian Flores went to high school a mere 20 blocks from where I live. So, my brother is a big-time Dolphins fan since he was a Marino fanboy, so I know they're my bitter rival, being a Jet fan. But I have a little, vested in the Dolphins, as crazy as that might sound to say coming out of a football fan's mouth. But I'm believing in just a breath of fresh air in that Miami locker room and that whole organization. Just you see the circus that's now come to New York with Gase and all the things that were coming out about how he was like very. Are we going with cursing on this show, or are we?
Yeah, absolutely. Knock yourself out.
It seemed to be very high school, high schooly and just very gossipy and just just kind of douchey. And I hate that because he's now my head coach. But I'm going with DeVante Parker is taking this as a new lease on life. I think that coaching staff is really, really, really putting a lot of confidence and faith and encouraging him. And I think between, Fitzpatrick and Rosen, the tandem of the two of them, I think he's finally got somebody that can figure out what he's best at and maximize his talents. And this guy was a yak monster in college, which is why I loved him so much. So I'm excited to see it. And because of that sentiment, nobody's going to want to buy him because they feel like, nobody, people aren't trusting. So, yeah, I'll scoop him up late.
Kind of hard to be trusting after what he's done so far.
Well, that's just how high the bar was set. He was
the first-round pick. What the hell? That's how high the bar is supposed to be set for first-round picks.
I guess so, but maybe the first year, maybe the second year. I mean, even last year to still have those expectations, then you kind of.
I don't think anybody had very high expectations for him last year.
All right.
I picked him.
I don't know of anybody anyway.
I picked him up in round 21 of a startup recently, and I fully agree with Andy. I think he's never had a competent quarterback before. And I think this time,
people out there that would call Fitzpatrick competent.
Well, I mean,
at least not past the first 4 games of the season.
Nobody can throw the ball down the field.
Yeah, no, he's a competent quarterback. He's just also too much of a risk taker, is what it comes down to.
He's a poor man's Brett Favre.
Don't get me wrong. I actually like Fitzpatrick because he does throw the ball all over the place and doesn't care. He's not afraid to sling the ball. I like that part about him. And you know what? I get it. The opportunity is there. He's shown in the past that the skills can be there. Whether he can do that consistently during the season when people are hitting him, that's the product we haven't seen yet. So
Rosen's got something to prove. Rosen's got something to prove.
Rosen's got to get on the damn field, and right now he's being outplayed by Fitzpatrick.
Oh, it's June 7th.
I understand that, but that we can only go by what we know now.
But Fitzpatrick will play the first 3 weeks. He'll throw 4 or 5 interceptions week 4, and then we won't see him again, and he'll be on another team next year.
Fitzpatrick came first too, so I think I think they have a nice situation there.
He's a veteran, so he's going to be able to pick up the playbook quicker than Rosen is.
Yeah,
so you got to give it time so Rosen can get his wheels moving.
Again, I'm not disagreeing with you Frank on that sentiment. I like Rosen. I was hoping the Giants were going to make the move to get Rosen this year. I was. I think Rosen in a decent system could put up good numbers, but I just don't know. That whole offense scares me. Still, the offensive line isn't very good. There's a lot of things not to like.
Oh, that
whole team's bad.
Yeah, it's not great.
But they're going to have to throw the ball, and they don't really have anybody to catch it. Jim, where do you think he finishes?
Man,
give me a number.
Well, I think last year he was a wide receiver 9. So I'll say I'll put him in wide receiver 6 class.
I'll say he finishes
6 wide receiver.
No, obviously.
That's
12.
It's like top 75.
Yeah, there you go. You're lucky you're a fireman, not a mathematician.
Wasn't that 75?
72.
Oh. Yeah, well, that's like top 75. It's 72 not at the top 75.
Okay, good enough.
I'll make a bet with you that he finishes higher than that. I say he finishes as a wide receiver, low wide receiver 3, high end wide receiver 4 this year. And that's a steal for where he's going right now in startups.
It is a steal if that comes to fruition. What would you like to bet on that?
Let's bet.
We don't bet money. We don't bet shirts. Is that what you said?
Let's bet.
That's my Big Daddy shirt. He's not a Big Daddy yet.
Let's that T-shirt. Or no, how about this? How about this? We'll do 2 eliminators for next season. The other person's got to pay 2 eliminators for the other person to get in.
The full league?
Just the $10 for the eliminator.
Oh, for the other guy.
Well, we shouldn't really do any cash things. I don't want to do cash things.
All right.
All right.
Okay, I will come up with a bet that we can do that'll be interesting.
First,
we'll think of it for next week. We'll announce it next week, but we will definitely do a bet on this. And you have to pick a specific range, whether he's a wide receiver 3 or a wide receiver 4. You have to pick that range before we make the bet. But we will do that on next week's show.
Health has been his biggest problem. I'll say that. That's
been
his biggest problem.
And concentration and focus, I think, is also a big part of his problem.
And Ryan Tannehill.
And again, we know the talent is there. It just seems to me that, he's one of those guys when he gets on the field in a game that he's always looking to move without the ball in his hands. And to me, that's one of the biggest errors a wide receiver can make. You always have to make sure the ball's in your hands before you're ready to move. And he's one of those guys that just tends to start to move before he has the ball. And I think that's where he loses his focus.
But you can't teach talent.
No, I agree with that. But you can teach concentration. So I'm not saying I'm giving up on him. I'd love to see the man turn it around because, like you said, he was a yak monster in college. It'd be good for this offense if he can do that again. They need somebody to do that again. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes out. Let's keep moving, though. Let's go over to Green Bay and talk about what's going on there. Aaron Rodgers coming out and says he wants to get the ball to DeVante Adams even more. He had second most targets last year. 167 or 169? Some insane number. What are we looking at? 200 targets for Adams this year from Rodgers. And what do you take? We all know the all new coaching staff. All the stuff and all the crap that went out the door with the old coach out the door and all the back and forth they went through. What's your take on the Green Bay offense this year for any wide receivers not named Adams? And I'll start with you, Frank. What are you looking at here?
I think Valdez-Scantlin's the wide receiver too. I know everybody's talking about Allison's taking the reps for the wide receiver too, and Allison had a good season last year, but I think Valdez-Scantlin's gonna. I think he's more talented than Allison is. And I think he'll take over that spot as the offseason wears on and they get to preseason games. I think he'll prove that he's better fit to be across from Adams than Allison is.
Okay, what's your take on this, Andy?
I think personally, I'm a little confused why people seem so surprised with the number of targets Adams got. It's almost like it's a knock on Adams. This guy got that many. I mean, that's what the league leaders are putting up every year. That 170, to 180. So the fact that, DeVante Adams was up there, he was one off the league lead last year with Julio Jones. But I mean, I don't think he's going to hit 200. I don't think anybody's going to hit 200 in a season. But for him to be up there, people to kind of say it shockingly is kind of like, you don't believe in DeVante Adams? Have you not been watching, football for the last couple of years? He's a number one receiver. I'm not saying you. I'm saying
I'm saying I don't think I've seen anybody react that way to DeVante Adams saying they didn't think he deserved to be up there. I mean, if you have, that's fine. I'm just saying I can't remember seeing or hearing anybody say that. I mean, again, the guy had a tremendous season. I loved him coming into last season, so he paid off big for me.
Maybe that was the wrong way to say it, like that he didn't belong to be there, but just kind of shocked or not that he could repeat it based on the offense. But I mean, you look at other offenses, I mentioned Julio Jones, and we look at everybody wants Calvin Ridley. I mean, Julio Jones.
Okay, I get what you're saying here. I think where it's coming from is I think people are saying, well, how much more than what he had last year can he really get? And I think that's where they're questioning it, okay, Rodgers, thanks for saying that, but how much more can you really throw the ball to the damn guy?
Right.
Because he was option 1, 2, 3, and 4 for them last year.
But how healthy was Rodgers last year? maybe he gets.
I think it was that. It was look. The health had some part of it. Absolutely. The play calling was just totally lackluster. It seemed like Rodgers didn't really have a lot of faith in the young wide receivers. Allison got off to a good start the first 5 games. 30 targets. He was averaging 6 targets a game in the first 5 games. Had 20 receptions, 303 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it wasn't like he was starting out bad. And that 5th game was the game he got hurt, so he didn't even play a full game. Over the first 4 weeks, he was number 32 wide receiver. I mean, not great numbers, but you're still talking about a wide receiver 3 there to get started. So, I understand what's going on with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I like the kid too. Showed well in preseason last year. Had a few good games, but they're talking great about it now. I mean, Rodgers came out and said the kid has absolutely taken the next step, and I could see him becoming an everyday starter. But I think right now Allison will be that number 2 with Valdes-Scantling coming on with 3 wide sets. But I think both of these guys in that offense with that quarterback should be able to put up viable wide receiver 3 numbers at least.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Allison's the guy you want in that offense. But I think a couple of the moves that were most intriguing to me were taking Jay Sternberger in the draft, who is, kind of went a little under the radar just because of how dynamic this year's class was at tight end position. I also, I don't like to make too much of 6-round draft picks, but I definitely think Dexter Williams is a higher talent level than a 6-round pick and is trending at the right time. This guy has, you talk about talent and having it. He has all the talent. He has the size. He could be an every down back. He just had maturity issues from his freshman year through his senior year at Notre Dame, and he's trending in the right direction and seeming to understand, like, okay, I got to straighten up and be more focused. So, I mean, this is a guy that could provide a lot of value. I think they're going to look to run the ball more. I think Aaron Jones becomes more of that complementary receiving back, that third down, that James White kind of guy, and Dexter Williams becomes the early down guy. So I think you add the tight end. You had Sternberg. You still got Jimmy Graham there. I think you factor in, what they might want to do with the run game and establish that a little more. That second wide receiver, I think they kind of cancel each other out. You're going to be looking week to week. Who's the guy I'm starting this week? And it's going to be a guessing game, which I hate playing those.
So Rodgers last year had 597 attempts. That's the second most in his whole career, right? Adams had 169 targets in 15 games. So it's about 11, whatever it is. I don't know. Andy's the math guy. 11.2, let's say, right? So if he plays a 16th game, right? I don't see him getting to 169 targets with 16 games, because who's to say Rodgers is going to, in this new offense, throw 600 times?
I don't think they do. Green Bay was dead last in rushing attempts, dead last in the league. So that's why I look at the Dexter Williams thing. I mean, they tried it with Jamal Williams. I didn't really love him coming out. Everybody's been clamoring for Aaron Jones. We saw the coaching changes in Green Bay because just people saying like, it just wasn't working. The offense was sputtering. And I think there's definitely going to be an added focus and attention on getting those rushing attempts up, which would cut in obviously to the passing attempts and how many they're going to have. You look at what they've done to the defense. You would think that, they're going to be looking to play more of a ball control game, knowing that you got arguably the best quarterback in the league that can, win games for you. I think this is going to be a different offense. So it's not to say that some of these guys at the wide receiver 2 or 3 for Green Bay aren't going to be valuable, aren't going to have cumulative totals that look great at the end of the season. But week to week, man, it's going to be a matchup game, and I don't feel like it's going to be anything with confidence week to week.
So you know what you are saying? You know what you are saying? You're saying they are perfect for best ball.
Yeah, that's 100% correct.
If you in a best ball draft, if you can get Allison and MVS together, that's perfect, because you're going to get whoever goes off as the wide receiver 2 any given Sunday for Rodgers.
Excellent points.
I'm looking at this, and I would say when he's fully healthy, he averages probably about 540 to 550 pass attempts a season. So if he loses 47 and gives him his at 550 pass attempts this year.
Man,
Who's losing targets? You know what I mean? Like,
I got a great co-host. I got to tell you guys.
So what was it?
I got great co-hosts. I got to tell you guys. You guys made excellent points with that. But I want to ask you guys both this now because I see in the chats from Frank Uresta, any love for Equanimous St. Brown? I like the kid a lot, but I mean, like I said, I thought you want to add him too. You want to roster 3 Green Bay receivers in a best ball league. Go for it because he's right in the same class to me as the other 2 we talk about. But
I don't think he's quite there yet. I think he has a chance to get there. I do think the other 2 are ahead of him at that point in their development. I tell you the truth. I stay away from him for one reason and one reason only. I can't say his first freaking name.
Equanimous.
I can't. Yeah, screw that. I'm just not doing it.
So wait, let me ask y'all this: Who would y'all rather have?
Talk about him.
Who would y'all rather have? Would y'all rather have James Washington or Allison or MVS if you had to pick one of your wide receiver 2s in a dynasty startup?
James Washington.
Well, James Washington not even going to be the number 2 in Pittsburgh, so it ain't going to be him.
Why? Who do you think is the number 2 there?
If you say Moncrief, I'm signing off.
Oh, yeah.
Washington showed nice flashes last preseason and then fell off the charts. He had a hard time learning the playbook. He couldn't read the defenses, so he wasn't sure what route he was supposed to run. Those are things that take time to develop. I'm just not sure he's going to be able to do it fast enough to get there this year. You can say what you like about Dante Moncrief, but I think he's gotten better. He just, in his early years with Luck, he just wasn't really there yet. I think I saw more out of him last year that I liked, and that was with a terrible situation all around him. In this offense, with Roethlisberger throwing him the ball and that system that they use, I think he could be an excellent number 2 with James Washington providing the occasional splash play. I'm not saying he's going to be that. I just can't see him as that true number 2 yet.
I sorely disagree. What happened to the 3rd-year wide receiver breakout? I mean, you said he struggled as a rookie. We were spoiled. We were really spoiled by 2014 and just what we think of the wide receiver position. So James Washington was a stud in college. I mean, he made Mason Rudolph my number 5 quarterback in last year's class because of how good James Washington looked. This guy was phenomenal just in every aspect of the route tree and what he was doing after the catch. He fits that system pretty well. I don't think it's why Pittsburgh felt the need to get into that, begging Antonio Brown, kind of game. I mean, if they didn't have depth at that position, maybe that situation, maybe they kowtow to him a little. And maybe
they never kowtow to anybody. That's the one thing they've proven. But they don't kowtow to anybody.
How much are you really going to see the field with like 2 wide receivers that are going over 1,000 yards? Like he was behind Antonio and he was behind Juju.
Yeah, exactly.
So what? They run 3 wide sets enough where he could have had a lot more value than he did.
Jim, how many times is the wide receiver
off the field? They took him literally off the field because he couldn't do what they were asking him to do. They took him off the field. That's why.
But he's a rookie. I mean,
I understand that. I'm just saying. I'm just not sure if he's going to make that big, huge leap in year 2, where I think Dante Moncrief is a little further advanced in understanding defenses, how to read them. Things like that I think they will take into advantage. They went out and got Moncrief when they still had Washington. Why?
Well, they also drafted Deontay Johnson.
And they also drafted Deontay Johnson. I don't think they have a lot of faith in him. I don't think that they really think he's there yet. I'm not saying they don't think he'll get there. Maybe he's one of those guys that takes to that 3rd year to really get going.
I got to disagree with you there. I mentioned Deontay Johnson.
Agree with me. Hey, look, I'll put it to you this way. I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken.
When was that? On Moncrief, you mean?
No,
you're wrong on Moncrief.
When you got married?
What I said. Think about what I said.
I thought I
was wrong once, but I was mistaken.
Yeah, so you're never wrong. I get it.
Exactly. But I was wrong when I thought I was wrong. Because I was mistaken.
You were wrong on Moncrief.
Well,
And you were mistaken that you should have said James Washington.
Okay, then here's bet number 2. Episode number 1, we're going to talk bet number 2. I will bet you guys, whichever one or both, that I think Dante Moncrief has a better season than Washington this year.
Okay.
All right, deal.
So we'll figure that and we'll come up with a thing we can do next year.
How secure are you? How secure are you in your Dante Moncrief bet?
I think Moncrief is going to outplay Washington. Yes.
Just Washington? I mean, can I get the field?
No, just Washington.
All right.
Just Washington.
I'll take Washington.
And we'll come up with some creative ways to do some betting. We can all think of ways, and we'll come up next show and come up with some ways to do that.
Moncrief's a buster. Quote of the night so far. And Scott Atkins is calling him a buster. He's a buster.
Jim, how about this?
Scott's always
Jim,
right. Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah,
Jim,
definitely, absolutely.
When James Washington outscores Moncrief, you have to call Sam. You got to get the red singlet and you got to put it on for a whole episode.
Yeah, but you won't be able to see the good bits. I'm sitting my ass down. You ain't seeing the good bits. Hey, look, I've done crazy stuff like that before. I guess you guys haven't seen it, but I had to do a whole show where I had half my head shaved, the other half was painted pink, and I had to wear this pink bow in my head from losing a fantasy football bet. So I've been out there, guys. I play in a league where every year the loser has to get a tattoo of whatever the winner wants him to get a tattoo of. So I'm not afraid to make crazy bets, guys. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole, we can go down that rabbit hole.
I don't have any hair to paint, so
you got plenty on your face.
The odds are significantly shifted in a 3-man pool as opposed to a 12-man pool.
So let's keep going. I put my pad away. I forgot what we were talking about next. So let's do. Okay,
we're talking about Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. You're on the clock. You're in the draft. You're on the clock. It's a PPR draft. These are guys that have, pretty close ADP on the FFWC ADP list. So which one of these guys would you want? And I'll start with you, Frank. Do you want Dalvin Cook or do you want Chubb for 2019?
I want Chubb. Simple, plain. Offense is going to be better, in my opinion. Doesn't have the injury concerns, in my opinion. He's the clear-cut number 1. I think Madison may take some carries from Cook just because they may be worried about Cook getting re-injured. Duke Johnson's not happy, and Kareem Hunt's suspended for 8 games. So,
okay, I'll go over to you, Andy. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I want Chubb too, but for different reasons. I think the recency bias. I think we forget how good Dalvin Cook can be, and that could be his offense. But the health is kind of scary. I mean, not to say he can't fully recover from it. Chubb was severely injured at points of his career as well, and has come back. So I'm not going to play that injury card. I think if they were both healthy, I think I just like the direction Brown's offense is trending in a little better. So I think I would feel like he could get me a couple more touchdowns just based on the way that offense seems to be going. So I would want Chubb.
Okay, well, to go back on that, I'm a Dalvin Cook guy. I love Dalvin Cook coming out. I've been grabbing him every year, and the injuries have been kicking my ass, no doubt about it. I need him to stay healthy to get a full 16. But I do like what Minnesota has done. First of all, they went out and got the Titans guard Josh Klein, which was definitely a big improvement. And then they went out and drafted Garrett Bradbury, who many considered the best center in the draft class. So that really gives them a nice push in that offensive line, something they desperately needed. But then not only that, you're talking about once they went to a run-heavy offense at the end of the season, Dalvin Cook was a top 6 fantasy running back over those final 6 games. And now you're adding in, Gary Kubiak's influence into this. He's not really a coach. He's one of those, offensive guru. I don't know what you even call him anymore, but he's not really a coach. But he's there to influence the offense. And I like his influence on this running game. I think he really brings a lot. He brought over offensive line coach Rick Dennison, who's always been known to do a lot of good things with offensive lines. And I think they continue to be a run-heavy offense now going into 2019. And that's where I'm giving the slight edge to Cook over Chubb. Plus, I am a little hesitant about what happens when Kareem Hunt comes back. I'm not saying he takes the job at all. They love Chubb in Cleveland. They absolutely do. But that's not to say when they get, Kareem Hunt back, they're going to want to put him on the field for one of two reasons: either to try and trade him at the end of the season and get more value for him. If he doesn't get on the field, they don't get anything. And the other is to try and keep Chubb, a little fresher, a little longer, in the hopes that they do get to the playoffs, things like that. So that really, brings me back a little bit. I like Madison because of the chance he could get if Cook goes down, but I'm not really buying into the fact that he's really going to eat enough touches from Cook to really affect Cook's value. But I think the changes they made in the offensive line, the changes that I think this offense will have in how they look at it, I think it stands out to me a little bit more because I don't expect Cleveland to be as run heavy as the Vikings. I expect them, with the weapons they have, they're going to want to push it downfield. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind about that. I'm not saying Chubb is bad investment at all. I picked these two guys for a reason. To me, they're right next to each other. But right now, I'm just kind of leaning a little bit more towards Cook.
Well, it's pretty fascinating because these two guys couldn't be more similarly paired, just in the sense that we were talking about Davante Adams and searching for that Green Bay receiver and all the targets he got. I mean, you got Diggs with 149. You got Thielen with 153 last year. People are expecting them to repeat those target shares. You look at Beckham going to Cleveland with his best friend Jarvis Landry there. These are both, big target guys. So it's very kind of coincidentally, ironically funny, if you will, that we're talking about these two running backs who are both in very unique situations.
Well, that's why we are talking about them, because I thought they made a very good segment like this.
It all makes sense now.
Again, it's when you look at the way Minnesota finished the season, you saw both Diggs and Thielen's numbers trail off because they went run heavy. And that's got me a little concerned with that passing attack in 2019. They got to take some of that pressure off Cousins. He was hit, I think, either the most or one of the top three most quarterbacks getting hit, having pressures on him all year long. The offensive line should be improved, but I do think they want to go with that run-first philosophy. And if that's the case, I think I got to ride that back and hope he stays healthy. I will probably, if I draft him, I probably will take Madison later on because that, definitely for that opportunity. We did, I did an experts rookie mock draft, about a month ago with some, big names. Sigmund Bloom joined me, Bob Harris joined me, a bunch of other people. And I took Madison in the 4th round just for that fact that he has that opportunity if Cook does go down to become a guy that could get running back one numbers for that brief period. So I get that, but it's very close for me, but I have Cook just slightly ahead of Chubb right now based on what I'm thinking I'm seeing. So let's keep going. The next one up, and boy, you guys talk too much. We're way behind in what we were going to talk about. But I like this one as well. How about Damien Williams or Marlon Mack? And I'll start with you. I think I was Frank last time, so I'll start with you first this time, Andy.
I'll go Marlon Mack, and I'll keep it short since I'm talking so much. No, Marlon Mack. I don't believe the Damien Williams buzz. I've loved Damien Williams since he came out of Oklahoma. I always thought he was a little underrated. I always thought he had a little more value than people gave him credit for. And then he finally gets in the right situation and hits at the right time. And I don't think he is or should be viewed as a number one running back. He to me could be that receiving guy, that backup, that nice compliment. The problem is what is ahead of him. So really nothing. That's where he wins. Yeah, Carlos Hyde there as well. He's winning by default. He's not winning to me based on talent. Marlon Mack is a difference maker. Marlon Mack is a home run threat from any place on the field at any given time. His issues with ball security coming into the league, he seems to have shored that up, and now his issues are health and staying on the field. But if he's healthy, this is one of the best running backs in the league, period. I mean, the size, the speed, the strength, the ability to do it from anywhere on the field at any given time as a receiver, as a rusher. Great offense he's in as well, equally as impressive as Kansas City. So give me Mack all day.
How about you, Frank?
This is one of the tougher ones for me because I love both of the players. But if I had to pick, I'm going with Mack. Andy said a lot of good points. One of the things to me is I don't think Kansas City trusts Williams yet, and we haven't seen a whole lot. Like he only had like 4 or 5 games here that he really showed us he could do it, and that was with Mahomes throwing the ball as much as he was throwing it last year. Mack does have Hines, who had 81 targets last year, but I would say a lot of those maybe because Mack was hurt some games, so he saw more targets than he probably should have. I think that comes down some. And with that offense, with all the weapons that they have, Luck second year coming back from the shoulder injury, they play indoors. I'd rather Mack.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to jump in here. I get all that. All the reasons you all said, and neither one of you said that he's also playing behind probably one of the best offensive lines in the game right now. What a change over that offensive line has undergone. They were one of the worst in the league just a few years ago, getting Luck killed. And now all of a sudden they're one of the best in the league. What a great job they've done putting that line together. And we saw Mack when he was healthy last year. He could be that guy. And this is probably a wrong decision on my part, but I'm going with Damien Williams, though. I just loved what I saw out of him those last 4 games. I did. He did everything they asked of him. He was able to run inside. He was able to run outside. He caught the ball all over the place. He was great at picking up the blitz and pass protection, all the things you need. Now, I know he comes with so much more risk because they do have Carlos Hyde behind him, who, unlike a lot of people, I don't think he's anywhere near done. I think the man's still a good running back. The whole move to Jacksonville last year was a total joke. And once again, Jacksonville's showing why the hell are they even in this league? They should have been in the AFF. They're just poorly run organization. And that was one of the things that showed clearly for me last year. But I like Damien Williams. I've always liked him. He just never seemed to ever get that opportunity, and he did. They've come out and said it's his job to lose. I get that. It's early spring. Who knows? And you got Hyde, and you got the young kids there. They got a few of them. But man, I love the way he fits that offense so well. He does a little bit of everything pretty damn good. I'm not saying he's a big, huge home run hitter, but he can do everything you need him to do in that offense. And they're going to need him to be a part of that offense because they're going to lose Hill. And believe me, I'm just not one of those people that think McCole Hardman is going to step in there and take over Hill's role. I don't think he's even close to that level yet. So I just can't go there. So I'm going to have to disagree with you guys. I'm going to go with Damien Williams there. Again, I get the reasoning for taking Mack over Williams. This is probably more a heart thing than a head thing. But I haven't seen the draft that way.
So before you move on, Michael Stepney in the chat made a very good point, and that's the Colts didn't bring in a running back, and the Chiefs did, which shows that they have faith for Mack to be the main guy in 2019.
We knew that, though. I was saying that since last year. There was, everybody was clamoring for the Colts to go out and get Le'Veon Bell because they had the money and the cap space. And I kept saying, and I mean, you go back to my shows last year on the Fantasy Frenzy. I said all along, there's no way they're going to do that. They love Mack. Mack gives them exactly what they want out of that main running back. And there's no way in hell they're going to go out and spend all that money on Bell. So I get that. I'm not putting Mack down at all. At the very least, I told you, this isn't a head thing. This is a heart thing. I've always wanted Damien Williams to get a better role. I want to see him do it. I just don't know if it's going to happen.
Damien Williams' career high in carries is 50 last year.
I understand. Believe me, I understand that.
So just assume, give him 200, I mean, not to change it to baseball, especially. I know, Jim, you don't want this to become anything like that. But we were talking before this about
become anything like that.
Well, Frank was asking me before about the Yankees run with all the DLs.
Yeah. I was going to set you both up, but the show hadn't started yet.
My point being is you get these fill-in players that look really great, and then we go, wow, this is his breakout. And no, it's not. It's over an extended period of time, you realize why he's been a role player his whole career. Damien Williams is a role player, and I
get all that. I'm not arguing any of those points. But I will tell you, if I draft Damien Williams, I will grab Carlos Hyde later, just in case.
Yeah.
I get that, but again, it's not a head thing; it's a heart thing. I just like this kid. I want to see him do better, and I think in that offense, he could do everything they need him to do.
Okay, I can get on board the heart thing.
Yeah, it just is what it is. It's the same reason why I can never let Larry Fitzgerald go. I always have to draft him, even though he did nothing for me the last couple of years. I still can't get away from him. Wow, this hour has gone really fast. So we're gonna do one thing only. I want a bold prediction from you guys. Well, I'll give one myself, but I'm going to start with you, Frank. Give us a bold prediction and give us the reason why you like that.
Josh Oliver finishes as the tight end 5 this season.
Josh Oliver finishes as a what?
Tight end 5 this season.
Okay, and what's
Andy,
your basis behind that?
Hold on, Andy. You got to remember that I used to be the Fuego guy. So when bold predictions come out, I'm gonna go up off the ledge. I'm going to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm not just.
I'm shaking my head for 2 reasons. One, I'm thinking I didn't go bold enough, and 2, did you really go that bold? So somewhere in between.
Zach Ertz is 6'5", 250. Josh Oliver is 6'5", 250. Nick Foles.
Carbon copies.
Josh Oliver was very productive in college, his senior year. And Foles loves the tight ends, and who do they really have to throw to in Jacksonville?
You know, they ain't got Dante Moncrief anymore.
Oh, Jesus.
DJ Shark.
Oh man,
they got a couple wide receivers, but they have a bunch of wide receiver 2s. They don't have any wide receiver 1s. And I think Josh Oliver can have a breakout rookie year this year, and I think he can finish as a tight end 5. You want it bold, Jim?
I'm
bold. Giving you bold.
That's bold.
I was actually going to say he's going to finish as a top 10, so you're a little bolder. And for all the reasons, I mean, Foles definitely likes throwing to the tight end. Last year, he threw to the tight end 31% of the time. In 2017, he threw to the tight end 30% of the time. Granted, he had Ertz, and last year he had Ertz and Goddard, who's another kid I absolutely freaking love, but unfortunately, he's behind Hurts. But I think Oliver's going to have another great year. I have him in a lot of different leagues where I've grabbed him. I think he makes great value.
And we grabbed him in DD4, the Degenerates 4 league.
One of our 7 tight ends. Luckily, we can start them all the way you set up the league.
Yep.
Okay, how about you, Andy? What's your bold prediction?
I feel like it's not that bold at this point, but I was just saying Josh Jacobs will be a top 5 running back, and that was bold to me because he's going around running back 20. So I thought that was good return. You know, four times your investment, ADP of 46 right now. So I mean, to get a top 5 running back, that would elevate him to first round consideration. And you look at Gruden's history, the only real young guy he had in this kind of range that Jacobs is in was Cadillac Williams, who got 290 attempts for Gruden in his rookie year. So if you can give me 290 carries for Josh Jacobs, I'm salivating at that.
So who out of Barkley, CMC, Zeke, Kamara, and David Johnson / Melvin Gordon falls out?
Out of those guys, I mean,
if he's top 5,
yeah, that's
one of them.
The position has been very volatile, so I wouldn't be surprised if any or all
somebody will fall out for whether it be injuries.
I agree that I would say at least 2 or 3 of them aren't going to finish top 5, even though they're all going something. I mean, running back is the most tip-turvy. It's like one of those. You ever seen the zippers at the carnivals? The zipper rides that the spins and goes in circles like this? That's what the running back position is each year.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's why we see a lot of if you ever look at any of the draft boards of any of the big big money FFWC leagues. I mean, the guys that are, spending, putting up multiple of the like $1,800 leagues and stuff. A lot of times those guys are starting off their drafts with wide receiver heavy just for that reason, because the running backs are so volatile. But unfortunately for them, wide receivers tend to be a little volatile at that numbers too. So we'll have to see how that works out. Hey, I like Jacobs a lot. I think he's going to get every opportunity, to be. I think he's absolutely their every down back. Definitely not worried about Doug Martin or anything. I think Jalen Richard did enough last year that he'll warrant that he'll still be involved in the passing game. Probably just not as heavy as he was last year because Jacobs can catch as well. So at least Jacobs gives them the chance to do both, where Richard really doesn't. Richard, if he's in the game, you're pretty much expecting him to pass. Jacobs gives them the chance to be a lot more versatile. But Richard did enough last year, one of their best players last year, that he'll still be involved. It's just I don't think he'll have any effect on what Jacobs does. So I like that.
No, I would agree with that. And just to touch real quick, what you're talking about the wide receivers, I definitely think there's a little bit more consistency year to year when you get into that elite level. So when you're talking about top 5 running backs, and that's just a carousel of different names year to year, I think you're looking at pretty close to the same, top 5 to 10 wide receivers for a 3 to 5 year window. So
as long as injuries don't happen like they have been to Odell Beckham and terrible quarterback play like Eli. It happens. It just happens. It is what it is. And, I find it funny that everybody gets down on Eli for being such a terrible quarterback, and I'm one of them. I don't like Eli. But the fact of the matter is, all of these award-winning numbers that Odell Beckham has had in his career have all come from Eli.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen various.
It's kind of ironic the rub there.
I've seen various people break down Eli's season the last year and the year before, whatever, and just saying that Eli's not bad. He's still an NFL caliber quarterback, top half of
He's
the
better
league.
than Daniel Jones.
Well,
and that sucks.
This is my thing. This is my thing. Like Oakland last year, Marshawn was a viable running back for fantasy before Marshawn got hurt. And now it's going to be the same offense, and they're adding a younger
Marshawn
running back, right? A younger Marshawn. Plus, they have Antonio Brown and Tyrell Williams.
Yep, yeah. I agree. Defenses won't be able to stack the box against him when you're looking at 2 receivers that can get deep on you in a hurry.
Yeah,
and Brown could beat you everywhere. So
you have the best route runner in the league, and you got the deep threat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And a quarterback that, even with all of the missing pieces and all of the interchangeable pieces he had last year, threw for 4,000 yards. I don't get it.
I don't get the Tyrell Williams love, to be honest.
It's not so much love. I don't give him love, but I do you have to respect him because he can get deep on you in a hurry. And he showed last year he can make those big plays. So, he's not going to do it often, and I don't love him in fantasy. But defenses have to account for him, and as long as you have to account for that deep threat, you can't really stack the box all the time.
Completely.
And that's where it's going to help Jacobs.
Completely agree, but Carr is a broken man, and until he gets fixed,
how broken can he be? He threw for 4,000 yards last year.
Yeah, no, he could have thrown for
more yards than Russell Wilson did.
He could have thrown for 5,000 yards last year, Jim. That offense was horrible. They weren't getting much out of the running game. They should have been passing a lot more.
4,000 yards.
Listen. I did this thing for Fantasy Pros, and going back with the whole Amari Cooper thing. There was a play that vividly. I tweeted pictures of it, still shots, and broke it down like a JFK investigation. And it was, you see Cook at about 5 yards and Cooper at about 15, and they're basically running the same route, and they're both wide open. And you can see Cooper, and just checks down for the 5 yards to Cook, and it completely ignores Amari Cooper. I mean, these are the types of plays he was doing. Like, he just doesn't trust something about himself or his arm. And
no, I don't. I think he didn't trust Cooper. Look, wait. I do. If you go back and look at a lot of Cooper's tape, the one thing that was always Cooper's problem, And actually, the guy who really did a great breakdown on this was Dwayne McFarland of the Tuesday Night Hustle podcast, who's also a part of our network. Yes. Shameless plug. He did a really good breakdown on Cooper in the fact of he's a great receiver when he can go up and get the ball. If you throw the ball anywhere near his body, his hand placement is always incorrect, and he just doesn't catch the ball well anywhere around his body. He goes up and gets the ball. He's one of the best in the freaking league at doing that. The problem was Carr didn't trust it to do that, so he was always throwing the ball into his body, and they just didn't gel. The one thing you saw when he went to Dallas, Dak had no problem throwing the ball up and letting him go get it, and then you saw what he could do once he did that. Well, and that's how that worked. Sometimes players don't click. That's just natural cause.
Yeah, and going back to the QB thing, based on next gen, Dak was like the second or third most aggressive quarterback in the league, where Carr was like the least aggressive quarterback in the league. So you had a completely different dynamic. I mean, I will just always remember the Pro Bowl. What was it, 3 years ago, where he just 50-yard, beautiful touch pass on, into double coverage from the 50-yard line into the end zone. Something I've only seen Kyler Murray do since that, and just Carr looked great in that. But once he got injured, that horrible end of the season 2 years ago, he just hasn't been the same. And I don't care if it's Antonio Brown, Tyrell Williams, whatever. Give me Jacobs in that offense, and you keep the rest.
You lost me at Pro Bowl when you started talking.
Sorry, I talked a lot. Jim's right.
Look, you can say
it wasn't because you were talking a lot. It was because
the offense was bad. The offensive line was bad. He might have been running for his life. I get all that. Man still threw for 4,000 yards. Something that there's some good quarterbacks in this league haven't done yet. And that was with his tight end being his number one receiver. So, let's see what happens now that he's got he's got one great receiver and one decent receiver. And I think their tight end, won't play the way Cook did last year, but I think they have a couple of guys on that roster who could be decent tight ends as well. So, again, all of that comes into play in the fact my statement was that they can't stack the box against Jacobs because of those receivers. Last year, they weren't really worried about the wide receivers, so they were stacking the box a lot more than they'll be able to do this year. That's all. So I'm going to get to my statement here for bold statement, and that's going to be that Breshad Perriman is going to end the season as a wide receiver 3. Okay. You heard it here first. He's going to end the season as a wide receiver 3. He's the kind of receiver that Bruce Arians is going to love. A guy that could just take the top off the defense all the time, and a quarterback that loves to throw the ball deep, and a coach who loves to throw the ball deep. Perriman is going to take over that Deshaun Jackson role in this offense, and I think he's going to have his breakout season this year in that offense. And it might be because of my Bruce Arians love that I go there. It might be. But there's been a lot of good reports about Perriman coming out already in the OTAs. Of course, he's hurt right now, but we won't get into that point. But, he showed a little bit more last year than we had seen previously. And again, this is another guy who was highly thought of coming out of college and just hadn't seemed to live up to it yet. Maybe this is the year he gets it. He's in a position in an offense that should fit him perfectly.
It's crazy you say that because he's in the James Washington position, right?
Well,
hasn't really done much. They took him off the field. He's been hurt. I think he's
further behind James Washington at this point because it's been a few years for him. But yes,
I mean, I don't think it's crazy to think, but with Godwin and Evans behind him or in front of him, I mean,
well, that's the other thing about that. See, that's the other thing about an Arians offense. They spread the ball around pretty good.
I'd like to see what his wide receiver 3.
There, you got Cameron Brate there who'll still be involved.
I'd like to see what Arians' wide receiver 3's production was, like where the wide receiver 3 and his team finished.
Well, you'll have to do that research then.
I will. But I'm willing to do this. Bet number 3. I'll take Parker and James Washington combined, and you can take Moncrief and Perriman combined.
Well, no, this was a bold prediction, not like one we're investing in.
Right.
But I mean,
that's a totally different full of locks there.
True.
And isn't this Rojo season anyway?
Hey, look, it could be very well. Look,
I was kidding. That was sarcasm.
See, but wait, okay, that's another great person to talk about, though. Why not? Last year, absolutely, he came in thinking he was hot shit and just, thought he didn't have to do any work, didn't have to come in ready, thought he could just step on the field and make magic happen, and quickly learned you don't do that in the NFL. It just doesn't work like that. This game's so much faster, so much smarter. It just doesn't happen. And I think that was just a big jolt. He just wasn't ready for that. But they are talking about his conditioning has been so much better. He's gotten himself in a mindset that he's working hard, and that's all you can ask. It took him a season to realize, holy crap, I got to work at this level to actually do anything. Maybe he does take that next step. Look, they didn't go out and really fill that backfield up with other names. And Peyton Barber has already shown he is what he is. He's a decent backup type of guy, but he'll never be a true number one. Well, so it could be Ronald Jones that actually does well in this offense this year. I'm not guaranteeing it. I'm not saying it will happen, but I could see it happening. He was, highly thought of coming out. Everybody expected him to do great things last year.
No. I was not in that. I was not in that bandwagon.
So you weren't. There were a lot of guys out there that were. A lot of guys that I trust were out there. Guys that do draft a lot more than I do. That said, he had a lot of good tools.
Tools, athleticism, and all that kind of stuff. But he never had great vision. Basically, we won't get into a whole Ronald Jones thing. But it's why you have a lot of people. I mentioned him, but you said here's another great guy to talk about. Jim, there are 32 teams, 53-man rosters. That's 1,696 players.
There you go, math guy.
Yeah, I had to bring the calculator out for that one. But no, that's why everybody's talking about Bruce Anderson, as a sleeper. But no, Ronald Jones, the line play at USC really severely took a hit from his sophomore to junior year, and then the senior year, the line was really not great. And it was if he hit the hole, he was gone. And if he guessed wrong, and it was a guessing game for him, he would run into a wall. And he has great athleticism, and you see some natural ability and everything like that. But he shot up through the draft process, kind of got a little overrated. And we see this every year. You saw it with Philip Dorsett. You saw it with DJ Shark last year. You see, Perriman being a guy that they test well. They shoot up draft boards. They get overdrafted, and then people are disappointed because the draft capital world wants to tell you, oh, well, look at where he was taken.
Oh, wait, so you're saying that these guys can never learn that they need to do more to get better, to increase and actually get better? You're saying that because they come out and get all hyped up and they don't live up to that, they can never do that again?
I'm not saying they can never.
You're saying that's absolutely wrong. Go back to, and this is the one I love to bring up. Go back to Freddie Taylor's start of his career. First few years, every year he was injured, missing time. Everybody gave up on him. Fragile Freddie, that's what he was known as. He couldn't stay on the field. Yeah, look at his numbers now. Injured. It took him a couple of years, but look at his numbers now. He had a damn good career.
But being injured and then not being able to pick up a playbook.
Yeah, two totally different things.
Totally different.
I get that. That's why I said he didn't come in ready to work last year. He just didn't. I get that.
You sound like a guy,
and he didn't want to put the work in. No, I'm just saying we have a tendency to somebody has a bad year, we just write them off forever. We don't give them these are men. At some point, some of them learn that they actually have to turn it around and put hard work in to get to where they need to be at this level. Most of them, all their lives have been told how great they are. You don't get to the NFL unless you were great most of your life. You just don't.
You sound like the ultimate DeVante Parker truther right now.
Well, I'm not the ultimate DeVante. Hey, again, he could do it. We've seen guys in the past where they got off the very slow starts, and then 3-4 years down the line, all of a sudden it clicks and they start to do something. All I'm saying is you can't discount the possibility.
Jim, he was on a horrible team with a horrible offense, and they had no shot at making anything. And they didn't even put him in to see what they had. Why?
Because he came into camp terrible. in terrible condition. He didn't want to open the
in
playbook
camp.
because he thought
But
he
what
was
about
smart.
in week 10 when they were 3 and whatever they were, and Peyton Barber's he sat behind Peyton Barber for a whole season.
Yeah.
I get that. I get that. Again, you don't think that would
Like,
cause if it was okay?
To
Wait,
be
let's
fair,
take
to
a
be fair,
different tack.
Kerryon Johnson sat behind Peyton Barber for all season.
Yeah, let's take a different tack here. Let's think of it this way: if it's you and you've been all your life you've been playing good football, and everybody's telling you how great you are, and you're going to make it to the pros, and you make it to the pros thinking you're hot shit. You step on that field, and they slam you to the ground and tell you that you ain't shit, rookie. You're nothing. We know you're nothing, and to some people they're going to react differently to that. Some people are going to say, okay, screw it. I'm not made for this. And that'll be it. Other people say, okay, well, screw that. I need to, rebound here and get better.
Or he could have been overdrafted.
Well, he could have been, but again, it's just a matter of, again, I'm not saying he's going to take the world by storm. Absolutely not. All I'm saying is to not give him the opportunity or the chance to think that he can improve. I think that's a mistake that a lot of fantasy footballers make.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying once they have a bad year, people just write them off all the way and never look back at them. And a lot of fantasy footballers are doing that about him now. If he was smart enough to in the offseason work at this game, get himself into better condition, which he obviously has because they've been raving about his conditioning. They say he's been putting in the work. He's spending extra hours. He's learning what he needs to learn. Why couldn't he take that next step? It's not going to be Peyton Barber.
But you're saying the same thing as you're doing the same argument for Ronald Jones as you were going against James Washington. Like,
yeah,
you were like, oh, they took him off the field, blah blah blah. Like they were telling me what right. The same argument you're doing for Ronald Jones, you're doing for James Washington.
They're not the same argument at all, and I'll tell you why they're not the same argument. Washington couldn't learn. Ronald Jones didn't try.
Wait, how do you know that?
Because they said that he wasn't into. When they came into camp last year, he thought he was king shit and didn't have to do anything.
So who do you want on your team? Do you want the guy? Do you want the guy that's trying but he's not getting it, or the guy that just doesn't want to try? Because I want the guy that was trying at least.
From being an idiot the first year and makes changes the second year. That's the guy I want.
I'm not drafting the guy that
Washington. Maybe Washington put in all that extra time in the offseason to start to learn how to read defenses and do all of those things you need to do at this level. Maybe he did, but we haven't heard word one about that.
You know who I want?
The team went out and got Dante Moncrief and drafted another wide receiver.
17th Dante Moncrief reference on our debut episode. You want to know who I want? I want the better talent, and that's James Washington.
Yes. Jim, I promise me and Andy didn't talk about teaming up on you this whole episode because that's what it should feel like.
On me all you like.
I'm sure it'll be a revolving door of who's teaming up on who each episode.
I'm not worried about that on the least.
Frank and I are going
strong shoulders.
Frank and I are going shopping tomorrow for DeVante Parker.
Believe
James
me,
Washington
you are
jerseys.
not the only one. You are not the only ones that disagree with me on my take of Pittsburgh wide receivers, and that's okay. If we all agreed on the same players, this game would be boring as hell.
Well, Jim, are you ready to wrap this first episode up?
I sure am, folks, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to wrap this up. This has been the first and premiere episode of Fantasy Football Champs After Dark. I'm your host, Jim Day. You can follow me on Twitter at FantasyTaz. We got Frank Scandurro here. Frank, tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at DHH_Frank. I don't write for Dynasty Happy Hour because I'm not very good at writing. Tyler calls me the sign guy. Just out there screaming at the top of my lungs on Twitter, making crazy posts. Next week, I am the one that schedules the guests for the show. Next week, we will have Adam Wadley and Chris Allen from the Owner's Manual podcast on with us to guest. Should be a good time, so y'all can all tune back in next week. Same time, same bat channel. For next week's second episode, and hopefully, maybe Andy and Jim will team up on me, and I can defend some takes.
Okay, Andy, how about you? Tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, real quick,
we're not talking about a raging fire.
No, and I want to thank everybody who tuned in, who stuck with us, saying good job. They love the arguing. This isn't really even that bad of argument. It's going to get a lot heated, I'm sure, as we get through this season. But I'm on Twitter at People's Pen. That's probably the easiest place to find the stuff I'm doing. I'm doing the show.
Wait. Specify that. People's with a Z.
People's with the Z. People's with the Z pen. You just look up my name, Andy Singleton. I think I'm the only one on Twitter, and it should come up that way. And yeah, I mean, I got a lot of stuff. If you don't know me, find me on Twitter, and you'll see a lot of stuff. I do the baseball thing. I have a draft with Giants. I finished 4th in the Fishbowl last year. I'm a DeVante Parker truther. What else can I tell you? So I dibble and I dabble with a lot of different things, and I'm happy to be here. And this is becoming a great thing really quick. So I already fantastically pleased with my 2 co-hosts. So I'll be the math guy. If Frank's the booker and Jim's the host, I'm the mathematician here.
Okay, then. 6 times 12 is 72.
Top 75. Is that not top 75?
He was close.
I know it was 72. That's why I said top 70. I rounded off. We did top 50 list, top 75.
75 is a cleaner number. I'm with you, Andy. 75 is a cleaner number.
That's where I went.
Well, that'd be it for us tonight, folks. Don't forget, follow the all-new Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. We are still continuing to grow. Lots of great content coming at you. All the different podcasts can be found at fulltimefantasy.com. Every show has its own page. You can listen to all the shows that are already up there. We appreciate it. Please, give us a thumbs up. Leave us a comment. If you're listening on iTunes or anything like that, anything you could do along that lines definitely helps us to grow, and we definitely appreciate it. Otherwise, I'm going to send Frank and Andy to your house. So thank you all, everybody. Happy Friday, and we'll see you next week. Have a good night, all.
Enjoy the weekend.